I had been living in my new house for exactly 3 weeks when I first saw him. It was a Saturday morning, and I was going through my usual routine, coffee in hand, lazily scrolling through my phone while checking the security camera footage from the night before. I didn't expect to see anything unusual, just the occasional car passing by, or maybe a raccoon digging through the trash. But there he was, a man, standing at the very edge of my driveway. He wasn't walking by, wasn't looking at his phone, wasn't doing anything except staring directly at my house. I stared at the footage, waiting for him to move, but he never did. For nearly 3 hours, he just stood there completely still before finally walking away. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was a neighbor's guest who got lost, or maybe he was waiting for someone. But something about the way he stood there, unmoving, made my stomach twist. I told myself I was overreacting, that living alone for the first time was making me paranoid. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. That night, before going to bed, I double-checked that all the doors and windows were locked. I even kept my phone close, just in case. But despite my best efforts to push the thought out of my head, I barely slept. Every little noise made my skin prickle. Every shadow outside my window seemed like it could be him. Sunday morning came, and I debated whether or not to check the cameras again. A part of me didn't want to know, but curiosity, or maybe fear, won. I pulled up the footage, my heart pounding before I even saw anything. And there he was again, the same man. This time he was closer. Instead of standing at the edge of my driveway, he was near the mailbox, just a few feet away from the front door. He stood there for hours, just like before, motionless. My hands started to shake. This wasn't some coincidence. He wasn't lost. He was watching my house. Watching me. I scanned through the rest of the footage, trying to see where he had gone, but just like the day before, he eventually just walked away. No car. No sign of where he came from or where he went. I felt sick. I decided to talk to my next-door neighbor, an older woman named Linda, who had lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years. I tried to keep my voice casual when I asked if she had noticed anything strange or if she had ever seen the man before. But she just frowned, shaking her head. "No, dear, I haven't seen anyone like that. Are you sure it wasn't just a worker or something?" I forced a laugh, pretending I wasn't on the verge of panicking. "Yeah, maybe. But I knew." That night, I kept every light in the house on. I checked every lock twice, even putting a chair under the front doorknob like I had seen in movies. It felt stupid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The man hadn't done anything, technically. He hadn't tried to break in, hadn't even stepped onto my property. But I knew deep down that he would. It was just a matter of time. I barely slept. Every creak of the house made my breath hitch. I kept my phone open to the security app, checking the live feed every few minutes. At around 3 a.m., exhaustion started to win, and I finally closed my eyes. But just as I was drifting off, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. My stomach dropped. My hands were ice cold as I grabbed my phone and looked at the feed. The driveway camera showed nothing. The backyard? Empty. I tapped to check the front door camera, my pulse hammering so hard I could barely hear. And then I saw him. He was standing at the very edge of the porch. I couldn't breathe. My body locked up as I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The man was standing at the edge of my porch, just feet away from my front door. He was still like before, his head slightly tilted, as if he was listening to something. Or someone. I felt my heart pounding in my ears as I fumbled to dial 911, my fingers slick with sweat. The operator picked up almost immediately, but my voice came out shaky and weak. "There's a man outside my house," I whispered, barely able to get the words out. "He's just standing there." As I spoke, I kept my eyes on the screen, terrified that if I looked away, he would move. The operator asked for my address and reassured me that officers were on their way. But even as I clutched the phone like a lifeline, I had this horrible feeling that they wouldn't make it in time. Minutes passed like hours. I kept waiting for the man to knock, to break in, to do something. But he just stood there. My whole body was shaking, my breathing uneven, and then, just like that, he turned and walked away. Not hurriedly. Not like someone scared of being caught. He just stepped off my porch and disappeared into the darkness beyond the camera's view. I felt a moment of relief until I realized something. He didn't walk back toward the street. He walked around the side of my house. My stomach twisted. I frantically switched camera views, checking the backyard, the side gate, anywhere he could have gone. But he was gone. There was no sign of him leaving. When the police arrived 15 minutes later, they found nothing. I showed them the footage, expecting them to take it seriously, but one of the officers frowned. "Are you sure this isn't a glitch?" he asked, tapping the screen. "There's no clear features, no real movement." His partner chimed in. "Could be a trick of the light, or maybe a shadow from a tree." I felt sick. "Are you kidding me? He was right there." I snapped. But they had already moved on, checking around the house half-heartedly before telling me to call again if he did anything illegal. Then they left. I was alone again. And the worst part, when I rewound the footage to show them, the recording was corrupted. The frame where he had been standing was static. There was no proof he was ever there. I checked every lock twice after they left. Then 3 times. Then 4. My hands were shaking as I shut the blinds and turned on every light in the house. I knew I wouldn't sleep, but I still got into bed, phone clutched in my hand, staring at the security feed like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. At around 3 a.m., exhaustion started to win, and I finally closed my eyes. But just as I was drifting off, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. My stomach dropped. My hands were ice cold as I grabbed my phone and looked at the feed. The driveway camera showed nothing. The backyard? Empty. I tapped to check the front door camera, my pulse hammering so hard I could barely hear. And then I saw him. He was standing at the very edge of the porch. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stared at the screen, too terrified to even breathe. He was closer than before, standing at the top of the porch steps, his head tilted just slightly. His posture was wrong, unnatural, like he wasn't entirely sure how to stand like a normal person. I wanted to call 911 again, but I couldn't make myself move. What if he heard me? What if he knew I was awake? My fingers trembled as I turned the volume on my phone all the way down, terrified that even the smallest noise would draw his attention. I watched the screen, waiting for him to do something. Anything. But he didn't move. For nearly an hour, I sat there, my body frozen in fear, watching as he remained completely still. Then, in one slow, deliberate motion, he raised his hand and placed it against the door. I felt my stomach twist. He wasn't trying to get in. He was just feeling it, like he was testing something. And then, he turned his head. Not toward the camera. Not toward the street. But directly toward me. I nearly dropped my phone. He couldn't see me. There was no way he could see me. But somehow, I knew, he knew I was watching him. My entire body locked up as his lips parted slightly, like he was whispering something. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. And then, he was gone. 1 second he was there, and the next, the camera feed cut to static. I scrambled to check the other cameras, flipping through them desperately. Front yard, nothing. Backyard, nothing. Hallway. My breath caught in my throat. He was inside, standing just outside my bedroom door. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. He was inside my house. My whole body was paralyzed, my mind screaming at me to do something, anything, but all I could do was watch the screen. He stood in the hallway, perfectly still, his head tilted at that same unnatural angle. His face was obscured by the grainy camera feed, but I could feel his gaze. Slowly, he lifted his hand and pressed it against my bedroom door. I felt the wood creak, the sound barely audible over the blood pounding in my ears. I wanted to scream, but my throat had closed up. I wanted to run, but I had nowhere to go. Then silence. For what felt like an eternity, I sat there, waiting for the door to open, waiting for him to step inside. But nothing happened. I checked the camera again, he was gone. I stayed there until the sun came up, too afraid to move. When I finally gathered the courage to check the hallway, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the doorknob. The hallway was empty. No footprints. No open doors. No sign that anyone had been inside. But when I reached out and touched the spot where his hand had been, the wood was ice cold. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't seen him since. But every night, I sleep with the lights on, my phone in my hand, the cameras running. Because deep down, I know he's still out there. Watching. Waiting. And one day, he might come back.